£291,000 in revenue, over 4,333 purchases over the last 12 months. We've helped this jewelry brand to double their sales, and in today's video, I'm going to show you how powerful Google Ads is when you do it right. If you're new here, I'm Will, and over the last 5 years, we've done over 80 million in revenue on behalf of our clients through Google Ads for 7- and 8-figure e-commerce brands like Arabella UK, Besame Cosmetics, Ironheart Jeans, and many more. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how a handful of small strategic changes were made inside this Google Ads account, which essentially allowed us to generate hundreds of thousands in revenue from new customers and ultimately take this account from plateauing and remarketing to existing customers only to growing a new customer base considerably. Let's get into the video. So for some context, the brand that we work with is a UK-based jewelry brand. We've been working with them for a little while now, and essentially they sell personalized jewelry within the UK. They're based out of London. They sell everything from engraved bracelets to bespoke personalized jewelry, necklaces, rings, that sort of thing. When they came to us, their Google Ads setup looked something similar to this. Absolutely no distinction between non-branded and branded campaigns. Every product was lumped into one campaign, meaning that rings, which were an underperforming product for them, were taking a lot of spend away from their top performers, which is the category bracelets, which was essentially killing their returns. Generally, they had very weak prospecting campaigns, meaning they were generating almost no new customers from their Google Ads, essentially meaning most of their revenue was coming through branded searches, people that had already heard of them before and were just coming back to purchase again. Basically, they weren't using Google Ads to grow. Their Google Ads account had become a glorified remarketing machine, which essentially made the results look great on paper, but when you dive into the actual performance, the back-end performance, what they can see on Shopify, they were seeing little to no growth from their Google Ads because Google had turned into a glorified remarketing machine, essentially. We were spending too much money sending ads and pushing ads to people that had already heard of us before, already purchased from us before, and were already considering buying from us, instead of actually introducing new customers through advertising to the brand, which is what they really needed. So we rebuilt the structure, we optimized their product feed, which is incredibly important, and then we scaled their prospecting campaigns. We've been able to double revenue for this jewelry brand through using these strategies, and now over 50% of their entire revenue comes from Google Ads alone. We added multi-six figures and thousands of new customers to this brand over the last 12 months, and in today's video, I'm going to show you exactly how we did it. Step number one that we fixed is we isolated branded and non-branded traffic. If you don't do this, Google will ultimately always favor your branded terms because they will generate you the healthiest on paper returns. They'll make your ROAS look great, they'll make your performance look great on Google Ads, but they don't actually do too much in driving new customers to the brand, which is a main focus for this business. We had a healthy returning customer rate. We weren't struggling to keep customers coming back once they'd purchased from us. We were actually struggling with introducing new customers to the business. So we had one campaign for branded search, and then we had one campaign for non-branded search. Step number two is that we did exactly this for our Performance Max campaigns and for our shopping campaigns as well. Now, this is arguably even more important because 80% of revenue for this brand comes from shopping, the same as it will for a lot of e-commerce accounts, but a lot of revenue comes from shopping campaigns. So between Performance Max and shopping, you want to make sure that your new acquisition is as high as possible, right? So we need to strip out those branded terms from Performance Max campaigns, from shopping campaigns, to allow Google to go off and find us new customers instead of essentially remarketing to existing customers to give us the best on paper healthy ROAS, when in actual reality we need as many new customers as possible. That's what we're looking to achieve. We have no problem in bringing customers back once they've purchased from us before. We've got a healthy email marketing funnel that we use. We're essentially in a good position with returning customer rates, so that's not the problem right now. New customer acquisition was the problem, it always was, and so that's essentially what we fixed by ripping out and removing these branded terms from our Performance Max and shopping campaigns. So there's two ways that you can do this. You can essentially use if you go into additional settings on your campaigns, you can essentially add a brand exclusion. So you can add your brand in there and it will begin excluding it from searches, or you can go ahead and you can speak to a Google rep and submit a form which will allow you to make that same brand exclusion. I would recommend doing both just to make sure that it's definitely happening. After a couple of months, you'll then start to see these branded terms appearing less and less in your campaigns, and what you should start to see, hopefully if we've done this correctly, is new customers being drawn into the brand. And yes, the ROAS might tank a little bit, but remember that ROAS was always sort of a fake ROAS anyway. It was inflated because of the branded terms that are in that campaign. So by stripping them out, yes, you're going off and yes, you're attracting new customers. That ROAS might drop ever so slightly, but bear in mind that you're hopefully going to be generating lots of new customers as a result of doing this. Step number 3 is that we built out a proper prospecting campaign structure. So the problem was with these campaigns and this account generally is that they were essentially basketing everything in one campaign, which, like I mentioned previously, you know, we had rings in the same campaign as bracelets. Rings were doing terribly for us. They have a much lower AOV, whereas bracelets have a much higher AOV, and they were essentially cannibalizing spend on rings and low performing products, which was giving us less money, less budget to spend on our top performing products, which were our bracelets in men's, women's and unisex. So how did we make this split for this jewelry brand and why did we do it? So essentially what we decided to do is we looked at the previous data. You know, they had everything, as I mentioned, basketed in one campaign. We then noticed that bracelets were driving over 70% of revenue for this brand, and earrings, necklaces and rings, they were probably driving anywhere from sort of 20 to 30% on any given month, right? They weren't our high moving products. Now, on top of that, the bracelets segment had women's, kids, men's, unisex, all housed in one, right? So instead of just breaking it into bracelets in general, we wanted to break it into men's bracelets, and then we basketed women's, unisex and children all in one basket. So essentially we had 2 campaigns for bracelets, men's, and then the women's, children and unisex all together. And then on top of that, we had earrings, rings and necklaces all in their own campaigns as well, with their own average order values and their own budgets and their own CPA goals. And essentially everything got basketed out into 5 total campaigns. We then set up a branded search campaign, which essentially allowed us to show ads on the brand name. So when someone was searching for the brand name on Google, our ads would appear. Now it's up for discussion whether this is even necessary, but for this particular client it was. A couple of nuances around this. You know, if you've got competitors that are bidding on your branded terms and you type in your brand name and you find there's a competitor above you, it might be worth running a branded search campaign. They're also worthwhile running if your customers are coming to Google and they're looking for your brand, but they're maybe mistyping the spelling and they're typing in an incorrect version of the spelling. They might have missed something. It's definitely worthwhile doing if that's the case, but essentially in a lot of cases, you're going to spend a very small amount of money on your branded search anyway, so it's worthwhile having that brand protection. Rough budget splits for these campaigns, we were roughly spending 60% of our entire budget on bracelets. That's over both of those campaigns, and then the remaining 30% was going to our earrings, our rings and our necklaces, and essentially then the 10% was going to brand protection and a bit of non-brand and branded search campaigns. So that's kind of roughly how we were splitting out budget. Now obviously you've got to flex budget with performance, right? So if performance is great in one area and not so good in another, then feel free to sort of strip budget away from the underperforming area to fuel the area that's doing really well. And fourth and finally is merchant center optimizations. Now merchant center optimizations are something that is overlooked in the entire industry but can make all the difference in terms of performance and be a complete game changer to an account. So we added seller ratings, so we added our reviews into both our shopping and our search campaigns. Now there's been some studies done on this. I believe that you can expect a click-through rate increase of between sort of like 10 and 18% just from adding your review star ratings inside your shopping campaigns. It boosts trust, it boosts credibility, and you can do the same with your search campaigns as well. We then meticulously went through each category and we excluded any products that were underperforming over the last 90 days. So that could be revenue, it could be ROAS, and then we looked at those products, right? So it's not just a case of excluding them and then doing nothing with them. It could be that they need a title optimization, it could be that they need a price adjustment, it could be that they need some promotions ran against them, but until you know what the problem is, you can't diagnose it. And then so essentially you get into this trap of saying, well, that product's not done very well, so let's just turn it off. No, let's turn it off and then look at why it didn't do very well and potentially relaunch it later down the line with some of the changes that I've mentioned made. We then planned promotions way in advance. So we made sure that we always had sort of up and coming exciting promotions for new customers or returning customers. And essentially we would launch them and show them in our shopping ads, which would help improve our click-through rate. It would help improve our performance performance, and we would get more sales and a boost in sales as a result of that. And fourth and finally, we migrated them over to Data Feed Watch, which allowed us to do more A/B testing, and we were testing everything from sort of product titles, product descriptions, and lots of different variables to improve performance. As I mentioned, those underperforming products, there might be a reason why they're underperforming. They might be getting underserved in the auction. They might be appearing on irrelevant terms because the headline is not accurate. So what you can do is you can use a tool like Data Feed Watch to essentially begin testing these, relaunching them, and hopefully they start doing better and better over time. And by doing this, you can actually get a bit of a boost in your free listings as well. So by optimizing things like titles and descriptions, you're optimizing this across Google's ecosystem, right? So your free listings might get a bit of a boost in impressions and clicks and potentially more sales because you're optimizing for more searchability through titles and descriptions. And in doing all of this, in actioning the 4 points that I mentioned, we were able to generate $291,000 in revenue for this brand, do over 4,333 sales, and a lot of those were new customers, people that had never heard of the brand before. Their ROAS went up while spend grew, and they generated over 50% of their entire revenue over the last 12 months through Google Ads and doubled sales for their business. And by building these new segments, the men's category went from underperforming to essentially now in line with the women's category in terms of sales and performance. Now, I know this can all sound very overwhelming, but if there's 3 things you take away from this video, it's separate brand and non-branded campaigns, exclude your branded terms from your Performance Max, very important, and optimize your product feed as much as you possibly can. Pack it full of as much high quality data as possible. Do these things and you'll be ahead of 99% of customers. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're a jewelry business or you're selling homeware products, a lot of what I've mentioned in this video is still super relevant to you. That's all for today's video. I hope you found some value, and if you did, consider hitting like, and if you've got any questions, comment below. We're on our way to our first 50 subscribers, so subscribe if you found some value in this video. We're posting weekly at the moment, and if you are an e-commerce brand and you're doing over 4,000 a month in advertising budget with your Google Ads right now, then feel free to schedule some time on my calendar below. We would love to do you a completely free Google Ads audit. We'll have a 10 to 15 minute conversation between the two of us before we go ahead and produce this audit. It's 6 to 8 pages long, packed full of value, and we will provide it to you in a PDF document and walk you through any bits that you're uncertain of and unsure of. But that's all for today's video. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video.